Nice to meet you. My name is Cesar Giancarlo. I'm the founder of MakerSpace, and a lot of people have approached us because they want us to help them to design their makerspaces. And so after you have decided that you want to make a makerspace and that you have found a location, so typically it would be like an industrial space or a community space that you want to convert, then you're going to go into the process of designing. And typically, the more your community have a sense of strong ownership and they are co-designing with you, the more likely actually you are setting the foundation for a successful, creative, and community-based innovation space. So if the people are part of every step of the way of choosing the space, deciding what kind of activity you're going to host in there, they are part of designing the space, then typically they will be much more engaged with what's going to happen in the future with that space. So here I'm going to make a couple of short videos where I'm going to show you the process of here in this particular video, the process of co-designing using real photos, simple floor plan, and then elaborate multiple scenarios of floor plan all the way to consensus. And the next video will be about more the sort of like fine detail engineering, talking to contractors and actually running the construction of the makerspace. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can transform a series of images. So I have a very low resolution floor plan and I have a bunch of pictures of that place. Everything is pretty low res, and the idea is not to do something perfect and very precise. Now it's just to draft a general idea of how we're going to arrange that space. Of course, we'll have to do something much more precise later when it comes to making furniture, lay the electrics, plumbing, and all that stuff, like engineering stuff. But for the moment, just general proportions, distribution of rooms, etc. Having this is going to be good enough. And I also have a video, so that's going to be quite helpful. Version of it, but before I make modifications to it, what I generally do is I would save it. So I would actually create a duplicate of it just next to it, because what if in case I want to go back to a simpler version, I don't want to have like a full 3D, but sometimes I work on a 2D version, then this would be actually very useful. Okay, so I now have a decent 3D representation with the window opening on this side, the fire exit on this side, and the windows here as well. So next thing I want to do is I want to represent the stuff that I definitely cannot move. So for example, the fire rail here, as well as the fire rail on the other side. These are things that I'm not able to move. And also stuff that I'm very unlikely to move, like these big switches or electric panel. Generally, it's not really an option or a good idea in terms of cost and security to move them. So I'm going to represent those two things. And another thing I need to look after is possibly the location of the water outlet. So the position of the evacuation pipe for the water is also something that is quite difficult to move unless you rewire the whole building. Alright, so the next thing you want to do is, now that you have a decent 3D model, you want to go into top view. And here I drew a table because I think that's going to help us to situate a lot of the stuff. And what I'll do is typically I'll make I'll capture this as a screen cap, and then I'll go into Photoshop. And what I'll do is that I'm gonna take this and I will tile it, create like tiles that I put onto. So as it's printing, I'm going to choose a couple of colors. I'm going to use red, green, dark yellow, and blue. And these are going to be like my main colors. Yeah, I think that's good enough. Maybe I'll take a purple for some special things. That's it, I got my prints. So I'm going to use those prints to draw different configuration for the space, and so I'm going to show that in a second. Okay, so you understand it. Once you have the floor plan, then what you do is that you make a 3D render of it. And what I like to do is, because I like the design to be, something that people will feel they have a strong sense of ownership, because they actually do, because it's going to be their space. Then you really want people to participate in your design process. And so what I'm doing is that once it's done, I upload it on 3D Warehouse, and people can click and they can go on the website. And what is really nice with this is they can actually walk around, they can actually see the space, they can go in full screen, and it really allows them to really get a strong sense of the space. They can turn it around, they can get a sense of the scale. So don't forget to put a person inside of it, that's really important. The next step is that I created, using the similar tool, I created several versions of what the space could be like. And so here, this is just the basic space. But if you look at this here, I also created 4 different versions of what the space, the different ways that the space could be arranged. And so if you look in perspective, it allows you to really see what's in there. But actually, I also like to make those much more simple version where you can just see it from the top. And so what is nice with this is that I color coded it. Here you can see I have the different colors. So the green is for the classroom, so really public, where you have people sitting doing mostly computer stuff. Yellow is workshop, MakerSpace office, private studios, tools and materials, digital fabrication. So everything is color coded. And so this you have very, very clear differentiation of which area is for what. And so I think that really allows to start a conversation. So the idea is not to tell them this is going to be A or B or C or D, is just to tell them these are sort of different directions. Give me your feedback, and I will keep basically integrating your suggestion into the final design. And how do you do that? So in addition of preparing this, what I've done is I asked people to tell me to sort of get them to think about the project. And so to get them to think about the project, I found that a very efficient thing to do was to ask them to rate the different versions of the space. So let me check. Yeah, so I explained them. So the main progression here is that I moved the green space, which is in my opinion, the most important space, is the classroom. It's big, bulky, to move it, and then I asked people to rate it. And so to rate it, this is how we do that. So I put A, B, C, D next to each other, and I tell them what are the things that we cannot change. We cannot change the position of the door, we cannot change the windows, we cannot also change the location of the water point, where we arrive with the water, where the water needs to be output, and also we cannot change some of the things like the fire system. It's just really difficult to change. But I also need to ask them key questions, like what is the most important to them. So for example, of all the functions, which one do you think should have natural light? Because in this case, our unit is pretty dark, so there's only one area that's going to have daylight, and I think that's really important if you're going to be working there every day. To have fresh air and natural light, I think is really, really critical. The second is, do you think that some items should be close to each other or next to each other? Like the digital fabrication class and the traditional fabrication class. And also, do they need reception? Are we going to have a person that's going to be there, or is the admin going to double up as a reception person? So what is going to be a sort of business model? And also things like how many of our members are going to come with us. So if there's a lot of them, then we need to have more blue private areas, and that's part of our business model. So as they see those different designs, it will sort of makes them start to think about the advantages and disadvantages of each of the design. And I'm asking them to write in the table what is the pros and the cons for each of them, and then to rate each of the units on 100 points. And so like this, they will sort of have to, the people who participate, they will sort of get in the mind of looking at this floor plan and imagining themselves walking through the space as, as staff, but also imagine what would be the experience like for the visitors. And also, like, if you have an emergency, if there's, let's say, a fire broke out, God forbid, like, how do we get out of this building in case emergency? If we have to bring supplies, if we need to get the garbage out, all these very practical things. If somebody is noisy, or if somebody needs to rest, where do they rest? If somebody needs to wash their hands, where do we put the water fountain? All these really practical things, they can start to emerge in this area. And then ask them to explain what is your favorite and why. Why is the most important? Then not only they said what is good and bad about each, but then based on this qualitative and quantitative data set, collecting from people who participate the co-design effort, then as a designer, you can sort of put it together and try to get the best traits and the best compromise from each of the designs. So basically we're going to have these discussions tomorrow, and hopefully that will lead us to a design where it makes the most people happy. It's also secure, and it's also like provide a good basis for a good business model, it's a sustainable and something that can also change over time. So that's the idea. Thank you. So this moment is by far my favorite, is when you have a design, or when you have multiple designs. They're not like prescriptive and final designs, but these are conversation starters. And so, this is really great. The people, basically each person that's going to be a member or user or part of that community, is examining and critiquing, making a critique of the design, and they're coming up with their own versions, which are typically a variation of the design that I've proposed. And after that, we ask them the specific pros and cons of each, which one is their favorite, and explain their improvement, how they are improving on the design that I proposed. And it's really important that we make sure that every voice is heard, and that no hierarchy is there, but really representing the interest and the preferences of the users, of the members, the community. So that's really a moment of co-design that I really, really enjoy. In the interest of transparency, what I typically do is that I would be documenting every step of the way. So for example, here we're using Notion and our community wiki. Actually, this is the employee wiki before we made this public. And every step of the way and every document is there. So every member of members of the staff, they can check the progress and they can see the different versions. They can see the feedback that they have given, the source file. And what is exciting is after this meeting, or during this meeting, we actually came up with a consensus design. Already like with a list of names of people that have expressed interest in joining us in moving into the new location. And again, staying perfectly transparent, this 3D file of the new location is being shared, and so anybody in the team can go and download and edit this file. So always this open source and transparent treatment, and being timely. So we had the meeting this morning, and by lunchtime it was already shared and online. So I highly recommend you to use this sort of transparent approach. So nobody, communicating very clearly with the participant that this information is shared, and they can find it, and they can keep communicating and giving you feedback to keep improving this design.